Hello all, and welcome to my next installment of my video collection year spotlight. This year is 1931. I have a few films here and I want to try to make this a one-parter, so I'm going to get right to it. The first film up is a film directed by Georg Wilhelm Pabst, and it's called Three Penny Opera. It stars Rudolf Forster and Carola Neyer. It's about this character. They refer to him as Mac the Knife. I'm not sure if that's where the song evolved from this character, but it's a seedy underworld back alley story. It takes place with this gentleman right here, wanting to marry this Peachy, I think her name is. About this film, it was originally banned by the Nazi Party in 1933, and they really destroyed a lot of the copies of this film. But thankfully enough, prints were found of the Three Penny Opera, and they were able to restore it and reconstruct it in the 1960s. And voila, this movie is now available for all of us to enjoy. All right, next up is Mata Hari, directed by George Fitzmaurice, stars Greta Garbo, Ramon Navarro, Lionel Barrymore, and Lewis Stone. It's a great cast. And Mata Hari translates loosely into Eye of the Day in Indonesian language, and it's typical for the word sun in that language. Of course, there's dramatic licensing taken with this story. It's been told so many times. The person was real, but most of the stuff in this film is fictional. Again, dramatic licensing. Funny to add, Ramon Navarro right here, he wore internal lifts in his boots, so the difference in height would be more pronounced in his scenes with Miss Garbo. And also, it was a rumor on the set that these two had a relationship outside of the movie, but it wasn't true. They were just really, really good friends. And so that's Mata Hari. The next film, one of my favorites, Cagney's the Man, is The Public Enemy. Love this film. Directed by William A. Wellman. Starring James Cagney, Jean Harlow, Joan Blondell, and Mae Clarke. Now, if any of you have seen this, first off, it's a great gangster film, but Cagney wasn't always the original person considered for the lead. They were actually going to go with an actor named Edward Woods, but the director got to know Cagney and saw his potential and thought he'd be perfect for the role, and lo and behold, a legend is born. If any of you have seen this, you know the infamous grapefruit scene. That caused so much controversy and stirred up so many women's groups around America, and they protested, what they deemed on-screen abuse of Miss Clarke. And for years after that, whenever Cagney was dining out in restaurants, people would send him over a grapefruit, in which he graciously accepted. Next up, another Cagney film, Smart Money, directed by Alfred E. Green, stars James Cagney and the also legendary Edward G. Robinson. Strangely enough, both of these actors spent most of their careers with Warner Brothers, and strangely enough, this was their only time they were paired together on screen. It's a great movie. If you haven't seen it, I'm checking it out. It's two legends working together. Great stuff here. Next film, Dracula. The original Dracula from 1931, directed by Todd Browning and Karl Freund. Karl Freund's really uncredited with this. Todd Browning was kind of suffering from the loss of Lon Chaney, the actor. One of his good friends that died, and he was really belligerent and just all around depressed, and a lot of the directing was left to Karl Freund to finish. There was also a Spanish language of this film that was filmed at the same time in the evenings, and I thought that was really interesting, and that's really included on this set too. And cinematographer Karl Freund, who also helped direct it, as I just mentioned earlier, achieved the effect of Dracula's hypnotic stare by aiming 2 pencil spotlights into the actor's eyes, and again, that infamous stare was born. Really a great film. You can watch the Spanish version. Enjoyed that as well. Lugosi's in both. Next up is another one of those Universal monster films, and that would be Frankenstein, directed by the infamous James Whale. I'm sorry for the glare. Starring Boris Karloff, Mae Clark, and Clive Colin. Guarantee you there were no grapefruit smashed in Mae Clark's face in this film. Strangely enough, Bela Lugosi was also offered the role of Frankenstein, but refused on grounds that this character doesn't have any lines. But he did eventually play the role of Frankenstein meets the Wolfman. And it's really funny to note, interesting rather, that the cast originally intended for this was actor Leslie Howard as Henry Frankenstein and Bette Davis as Elizabeth, but Whale wanted Colin Clive for the role of Henry, and that would have been really interesting because Leslie Howard and Bette Davis were later paired in 1934 in Of Human Bondage, another great film, and one of my good friend's favorite films, Mr. Joel 450. Alright, next we have another great film, and it's part of the Criterion Collection, and deservedly so, and that's Fritz Lang's starring Peter Lorre. This is such an excellent film. If you haven't seen it, I suggest you check it out. This movie was banned by the Nazis in 1934, and Premiere Magazine voted this as one of the 25 most dangerous movies. Fritz Lang, he really had, he was notorious for treating his actors bad. He demanded a lot of physicality out of them. So in a scene where Peter Lorre was thrown down the stairs, I mean, they did that take several times, probably to Mr. Lorre's dismay. And actually, he had done predominantly comedies up until this point. And director Fritz Lang claims that this is one of his favorite films among most, and he made it, to come back from what he deemed as a flop in that film's, of course, the brilliant, what I think's brilliant, 1927's Metropolis. This is also Fritz Lang's first sound film. It was only filmed in 6 weeks, and this movie right here has the I guess, the notoriety of being the very first serial killer movie. I'm thinking that this is going to have to be a two-parter. Okay, so the last one for this part is Little Caesar, starring Edward G. Robinson, another gangster film, must-have staple. Directed by Mervyn LeRoy, stars Edward G. Robinson and Douglas Fairbanks Jr. Clark Gable was actually considered for the lead in this role, but thank goodness I went to Edward G. Robinson. I can't imagine Mr. Gable playing this role. So that's there's going to be a second part to this, so stay tuned.